Hi everyone, thank you for joining us today. My name is Fatih Akyuz, and our study with Dr. Márta Fülöp, named Emerging Adulthood, Intercultural Romantic Relationships and Cultural Adaptation of International Students in Hungary, will present you two case studies of two Arabic international students studying in Hungary. The case studies focus on their experiences with intercultural romantic relationships, exploring the interplay of cultural adaptation, identity formation, and the transient nature of their stay. So it's better to have a quick look at the evolving Muslim population in Europe. The growing Muslim population in Europe is a significant demographic shift, with over 25 million Muslims living in the region as of 2016. And in Europe, Muslims projected to have more children than non-Muslims. And Muslims are also younger than non-Muslims. So international students are not actually considered as immigrants in the traditional sense because they are expected to go back to their countries after their studies. So we call them sojourners. But still, on average, 25% of international students stay in the host country after their studies. And Arabic students who decide to stay in the country of study may further increase the number of Muslim population in Europe. That's why we need more and more studies to understand this demographic shift, this phenomenon, in terms of multiculturalism, in terms of integration policies, in terms of their adaptation processes, and in so many other aspects to increase knowledge and awareness on this regard. In this study, we aim to understand the lived experiences of Arabic students in intercultural relationships or in need for affiliation, and we are going beyond the quantitative data and we are exploring the details of their personal stories. So we are particularly interested in how their temporary status as students, often on short-term visas, influences their approach to relationships. And do they feel pressure to find a partner quickly, or do they hesitate due to the uncertainty of their future? We also want to understand how their cultural backgrounds shape their expectations and values regarding relationships. Do they feel pressure to adhere to traditional norms, or do they embrace the freedom to explore different cultural perspectives? So these are all the things that we are interested in our study. In 2021, over half of the tertiary level students in Europe were from non-European countries, primarily Asia and Africa. The largest number of scholarship recipients in Germany in 2018 came from the Middle East and North Africa. Also, the biggest number of international students in France is from the same region, who make up 29% of all international students. So these international students are often in the stage of emerging adulthood, a term proposed by Arnett. It's a time of a significant personal and identity development. The Arabic students in our study are also in sojourner status, which can create a tension as any long-term relationship they initiate may require them to stay in the host country or Europe. Love knows no borders as international students follow their academic careers abroad. Of course, these people are also exploring love and relationship at the same time, and they often cross cultural and national boundaries because the people they interact abroad is either the home countries, host countries members, or other um, members of different nationalities. So what happens when these students fall in love with someone from the host country or a different nation, especially if their families disapprove? With the following research questions, we were interested in so many different aspects of intercultural romantic relationships. The first one was, how do the need for affiliation and intercultural romantic relationships influence their cultural adaptation? And the second one was, what family and cultural pressures do these students face in their relationships, and how do these pressures intersect with their developmental stage and temporary residence status? And we were also interested to understand how the stage of emerging adulthood influence the nature of these relationships, and in a transient context, we were also interested to understand how do they negotiate tensions arising from intercultural romantic relationships with their partners, family members, and their broader heritage culture. And also, we were interested in how do these relationships influence their long-term plans, including settlement, career, and family formation. To interpret our findings, we draw on two key theoretical frameworks. The first one is emerging adulthood, proposed by Arnett. So, emerging adulthood is characterized by identity exploration, instability, self-focus, feeling in between, and possibilities and perceived optimism regarding the future. So international students pass through this stage abroad in a foreign, a new context, far from their families, far from their social supports. So when it comes to cultural tightness and looseness theory that is proposed by Gelfand, this theory suggests that cultures vary in the strength of their social norms and the tolerance for deviance from those norms. So tight cultures like those found in many Arabic countries have strong norms and low tolerance for deviance, and they emphasize order, conformity, and social cohesion. They are usually more religious, reinforcing adherence to moral conventions, and they are more prevention focused and cautious. So examples can be Pakistan, Morocco, and Palestine. When it comes to loose cultures, like those many in European countries, have weaker norms, higher tolerance for deviance, and emphasize individuality, freedom of expression, and openness to change. Arabic countries are tight in nature, and Hungary is described as a loose culture. So this study explores how the transition from a tight to a loose culture affects Arab students' experiences with their intercultural romantic relationships. We have two participants for this case study. One of them is Moroccan, one of them is Palestinian. They are both males, they are both 27 years old, and they are both doing their PhDs in Hungary. Moroccan one is in Hungary for 6 years, and the Palestinian is in Hungary for 3 years. So we collected the data with semi-structured interviews with open-ended questions that averaged 90 minutes in duration, and the interviews were conducted in English, in common language. So we transcribed the interviews verbatim, and then we reviewed and we read several times. Then we employed thematic analysis to identify key themes and the patterns in the interview data. Let me introduce you to our two participants. So the first one is Moroccan, 27 years old, PhD student who has been living in Hungary for 6 years. He's in a committed relationship with a Moroccan Christian woman that is a choice challenge his family's traditional values. So he's dealing with cultural pressures as they plan their future together. So he values the emotional connection he has with his girlfriend and the freedom afforded by European culture, but at the same time, he perceives discrimination and struggles to adapt to certain aspects of Hungarian culture. So when it comes to our Palestinian participant, who is also a PhD student from a Muslim background, who has experienced past relationships but is currently single, and he is wishing to form meaningful connections, but all at the same time hesitant and cautious due to familial expectations and uncertainty about the future. He also appreciates the individualistic values of European society, but he also misses the strong social support that he had back at home. The themes we developed from the data are the followings: impact of the relationship on adaptation, influence of cultural background on relationship formation, family and cultural pressures, emerging adulthood and relationship dynamics, negotiating tensions in intercultural relationships, and settlement, career, and family formation. So both participants emphasized the importance of their romantic relationships or the desire for one as a source of motivation and emotional support in their daily lives or in work. So the Moroccan one says that I would say it's one of the main motivations that gives you work like a machine. But when you are feeling tired, when you are feeling like incapable of doing things, you remember that you have a responsibility. You remember that you have someone expecting certain things from you. He also continues saying that once we figured out that I have a certain health issue, he mentions, she just supported me many times. We go to doctor together, but at the same time, he accepts that due to his relationship, he somehow felt a social withdrawal from his circle. He states that since we had a relationship, I have never thought that I'm obliged to go and have more friends. I know this is a wrong decision. I know that I need to make more friends. Um, I just don't see a desire for that. So as he prioritizes his partner over expanding his social circle, he somehow feels that there is a certain social withdrawal from his side. So the Palestinian one, he explicitly says that he is actually in need of someone in a foreign society. He says that here I'm alone, I'm a foreigner. In Palestine, I have my family, I have my people. Here you feel that there is no one behind you. He also says that I think I needed a relationship. I will not say marriage, a relationship. I don't see the woman for just romantic. I like, for example, to talk with her. So the Palestine students' experience tell us that the importance of social connections for international students. His longing for a relationship says that the need for companionship and emotional support in a foreign environment, this need for affiliation can be a powerful motivator for seeking out relationships, and even in the face of certain cultural and logistical challenges. So when it comes to the influence of cultural background on relationship formation, first of all, we see that both participants perceived freedom and openness in Hungary, and they were drawn to the perceived looser cultural context of Hungary, and they value the freedom and openness compared to their home cultures. So this transition from a tight culture to a loose one, it actually enables them to involve in intercultural romantic relationship that somehow perceived easier to do abroad in a loose culture than their tight cultures. So the Palestinian one says that the feeling of being abroad is liberating. There is not a cultural pressure. There are no eyes staring at you on the street even. So he says that I like the open lifestyle. Everything is much more free. The life there is totally different from here. We have many restrictions. So when it comes to Moroccan participant, he also perceives the same or the similar freedom and openness in Europe, in Hungary, and he says that because at home I remember there are certain rules. You cannot walk with girls outside. You cannot drink, and you cannot do this, and you cannot do that. So, but at the same time, since they are from tighter cultural backgrounds, there are certain cultural norms and expectations awaiting them. So, the Moroccan one says that he is actually very reluctant to disclose his girlfriend's Christian background to his family. So, he says exactly this: my mom doesn't know that she is Christian. I am pretty sure she won't like it. Once she will know, she will get nervous about it. She will be mad at me, maybe, but I'm pretty sure once she will calm down, she will just accept it. So when it comes to Palestinian participant, he is also reluctant to disclose in case she has a girlfriend. He says that we don't have it in my culture. We don't have this step before marriage. I can't say that it's my girlfriend I go out with. So it's obvious that both students acknowledge the persistent influence of their cultural backgrounds. So the Moroccan student's reluctance to disclose his girlfriend's Christian background to his family, and the Palestinian student's concerns about the potential conflicts with his family in regard to a potential girlfriend tell us that there is still an ongoing negotiation between individual desires and cultural expectations. When it comes to family and cultural pressures, we see that the fear of family disapproval due to cultural and religious differences is a significant pressure for both cases. So the Moroccan participant says that her family is Christian and they want to keep things straight. My family is Muslim and they want to keep things straight. So his decision to hide his girlfriend's Christian background is reflecting the power of cultural and familial pressures on him, or the potential consequences of defying them. So this sort of secrecy can create a big pressure on the relationship, and then they find it really hard to integrate their communities, their families. So maybe even for that reason, they would like to avoid from such things, and they would like to stay in Europe, just not to involve in potential certain issues between the families. So when it comes to Palestinian case, he says that I will keep my family away from that. Even if I got married, I would not tell them that we were living together. So we see here that cohabitation is strictly forbidden in his culture, and he cannot tell them that we were living together. So these pressures rooted in tighter cultural norms, and they can manifest as expectations regarding partner selection, relationship timelines, and adherence to cultural and religious norms. So when it comes to emerging adulthood and relationship dynamics, we see that both students are in the middle of identity exploration, seeking to define themselves personally and professionally, and they have different degrees of self-focus. So, for example, the Moroccan one seems more like he's focusing on himself and his own life and his own independence and autonomy, and he prioritized his relationship with his girlfriend despite the potential family disapproval. He says that they are not the one who is going to marry me, or they are not the one who is going to live with me for sure. He also adds that by the end, I would probably want to make sure they don't want to say no. So the temporary nature of their student visas also creates uncertainty about their future, and it also leads them to a fear of commitment and concerns about long-term compatibility. We see this especially on Palestinian case, and his fear of commitment partly from his temporary status in Hungary and uncertainty of his future plans. He says that I have a fear always to start a relationship, a serious one, not being able to see the future. He also adds that, am I going to stay here forever with her? Is she able to come with me to Palestine? Are we able to live separately? She's here and I'm in Palestine and visit her. She visit me. Would that be practical for me and for her? Are we able to establish a family? Can I leave my family in Palestine and my responsibilities, my life there? So we see that the instability and uncertainty characteristics of emerging adulthood are actually amplified in a foreign context, making it very, very hard and challenging to establish stable and lasting relationships, especially for the Palestinian case. So when it comes to negotiation tensions in intercultural relationships, we see that the tension between individual desires and cultural expectations is a central theme in both cases. Both students seems they have different strategies to employ to manage these tensions. The Moroccan student decides to prioritize his relationship over potential disapproval, and it reflects a growing sense of autonomy and independence, which is a characteristic of emerging adulthood at the same time. So he says that that would be a day where we would have to think real and do the initiative. I would definitely want that. There will be some problems. So the thing is that we would prepare ourselves for the problems, but we are sure and certain that we can manage as we can. When it comes to Palestinian one, um, his cautious approach tells us the ongoing influence of culture norms and family values on his decision making. He says that if I have a girl to be married for, I will not tell my aunt if she asks. Maybe I will share it with a friend, maybe close friend, best friend, maybe cousin, but avoid the family members. So we see that the Moroccan student more focus on open communication with his partner, and he prepares himself for a potential challenge, while the Palestinian student relies on selective disclosure, and he prefers to maintain the harmony within his family. At the same time, we can read the situation based on Marcus and Kitayama's independent and interdependent self-control framework. So the Moroccan student exhibits a more independent self-control, and he seems that he prioritizes personal choices and values in his relationship over his cultural background. In contrast, what we see in the Palestinian case, the Palestinian students' cautious approach and emphasis on his family approval, it aligns with a more interdependent self-control, where maintaining social harmony and adhering to cultural norms are important. Settlement, career, and family formation are also different in both cases. The Moroccan student seems like he's prioritizing his partnership, and he also prefers a joint decision making with his girlfriend, and he also prefers to stay in Europe. he says that we are either going to move to Vienna or Berlin. This is so far what we have in mind. We are also looking for opportunities in Amsterdam. If I cannot find an internship in Amsterdam, we are not going there. And then regarding the question, would you consider returning to Morocco? He says that we would stay in Hungary. If you go back to Morocco, then she will go back. She will have to go back to her home. I will have to go back to my home. It's more complicated having some privacy. It's almost impossible. And even if we travel somewhere else in Morocco, in another city, the culture and the social context is still not that open. So it shows us that he's really willing to move to another country than Hungary just to be with his partner, because he thinks that if they go back to Morocco because of their differences in the religious sense, they cannot be together, or they cannot have privacy, or they cannot see each other as often as they see here in Hungary or in Europe. So we again see the freedom and the openness of the European context, and how do they perceive this in terms of their relationship. So when it comes to our Palestinian case, we see a dilemma here. His dilemma is between his homeland and a possible romance, possible love, or a possible marriage. He says that, to be honest, like the idea of leaving everything in Palestine and stay here forever, and that's the main obstacle when we are talking about marrying someone from abroad, which I don't know how it will be solved. How it will be solved. And then he also says that if I like her too much and I see myself marrying her, first take her into consideration, and then the others come after her. As a conclusion, our study shows that romantic relationships can be a source of social support in a foreign land for international students, and the family and cultural expectations impact the relationship formation, and the transition from a tighter culture to a looser one facilitates the intercultural romantic relationships, and the transient nature of student visas intensifies the pressures to manage the relationships within a limited time frame. So while the institutions actively encourage student mobility, but they often fail to address emotional needs of international students. So there is an urgent need for counseling services and further research on international students' social and emotional lives, including romantic relationships, particularly from intercultural aspects. If we talk about possible dissatisfaction of international students, we cannot merely attribute this to financial constraints, academic pressure, perceived discrimination, or staying away from home. This research shows us that in case we want to understand their experiences in deep, we cannot ignore the aspect of romantic relationships they involve. This is because compared to peers at home, they experience such things in a very fragile developmental stage, far from home, far from loved ones and social support. So we can also say that the dilemmas these young people, or the struggles these young people, these young sojourners face, can be also partially generalized to immigrants of their age in Europe. So we also encourage more and more studies on this particular subject, on this particular group as well, on immigrants as well. Thank you so much.